Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I am so delighted that you've joined us today. Thank you for being here on this beautiful Monday. Today, we're going to talk about Disaster Aid Canada. I've got two guests with me from our Zoom booth, once again, being that we're not yet in studio. If you're hearing the Zoom booth, you know that there may be some technical issues. There may be some noises in the background. There may be the rings and the bings and the bangs and the dings. Just don't even worry about it. It's part of the charm of the program. Once again, I am so glad you've joined us. I'm Kathy Holmes, your host for Act 3. In the Zoom booth, I have Ken Greig and Jerry Belchins, and I'm sure that I have spelled his name incorrectly, but that's not unusual, or said his name incorrectly. Never mind spelling it. That is also part of the charm. Ken, tell us a little bit about Disaster Aid Canada. What is it? Why is it? Let's talk about it.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Disaster Aid Canada is a Ladysmith Rotary project that started way back in 2004. It was taken on by the Ladysmith Rotary Club, and it has evolved since that time to where in 2010 we actually incorporated. We are a registered charity. Our motto is rebuilding communities together. We do a lot of international work with natural disasters, as well as Canadian disaster relief as well. We're a fully registered Canadian charity. We're also one of the founding members of Disaster Aid International. So Disaster Aid International right now has 12 member countries in addition to us. And in 2019, we are actually become an official collaborative organization of Rotary International. Okay.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm a big fan of Rotary. Rotary has done some incredible work, certainly in our community. I think we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but don't we have like 4 between here and Qualicum, Parksville area? There's quite a number. Is that right?
Oh, more.
More
than that.
Oh, well, there you
we
go.
have 5 Rotary clubs in Nanaimo.
Yep.
There's also Parksville. There's Oceanside or Qualicum Beach.
Yeah.
There's one in Nanoose Bay, right, Jerry?
Yeah. It's and there's 3 in Duncan.
Perfect segue, Jerry. Perfect segue. Jerry, I said your name wrong. It's how do you pronounce your last name? Belchins?
Belgians, yeah.
Belchins. Oh, so I wasn't so far off then.
No.
Oh, good. That makes me happy. Jerry, you're the executive director of Disaster Aid Canada. What got you started in it? This, yes, it's part of the Rotary, but there's more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Years ago, when I was living in Tawasin, I was a member of the Rotary Club over there. And around 2006, I became kind of a coordinator for for Shelter Box, which is another Rotary organization. When I moved to Tawasin, our club was very much involved in disaster aid, and my interest, my fascination was with international projects. So I became kind of a coordinator or champion, I guess, for our club, and got involved with raising money and so on. And then the opportunity came to become the executive director about almost 2 years ago. And I jumped at that chance.
Yeah, it's such a worthy cause. Ken, what's the difference between Disaster Aid Canada and Red Cross? I caught you, didn't I? Is there a similarity between Disaster Aid Canada and Red Cross, or are they so very different?
They're very different. Okay. Disaster Aid Canada started with the supplying of materials for warmth and safety. There were houses, hygiene products, water filtration products, those types of things that we would ship in bulk as much as we could to the affected area. We found that logistically that was more and more difficult to do. So we've evolved Disaster Aid Canada to partner with local Rotary clubs, okay, in the area of the natural disaster. I'm going to get Jerry to go into some actual details.
Mhm.
So what we do is we coordinate local hands-on people with Rotary clubs and other organizations in the affected area, and then we send funds and we coordinate that partnership with them. We've actually now formed with Rotary International a regional collaborative because all of the Rotary International disaster aid relief programs, we find it's better. So we've partnered with Disaster Aid US, Disaster Aid throughout Central America, so that we could focus our activities and logistically help out more in those areas where we have Disaster Aid Ireland, Disaster Aid UK, and Disaster Aid Europe. They're focusing more on Europe and the Middle East,
For sure.
so that we can better coordinate and provide faster, more effective relief by partnering with local Rotary clubs in the affected areas. That way we're using local people, local companies. The money is being spent locally, and it falls right in line with our motto of rebuilding the communities locally.
Yeah, for sure. That makes perfect sense, actually. And as you said, the cost effectiveness of it alone, I would imagine, really makes the difference. Jerry, Ken kind of sort of threw the reins back over to you and sort of breaking down what some of that looks like. In that process, what is, I mean, I know that this sounds odd, but what does a disaster mean in the context of when the Rotary gets involved with Disaster Aid Canada?
Well, let me give some examples over the last year. Actually, the day that I started, Hurricane Dorian hit the Bahamas. And that was a massive disaster there. I think it was 13,000 houses destroyed, hundreds and thousands of people displaced and so on. That was kind of when we were still doing a more standard way of doing things. We were asked by the Rotary Club of East Nassau to provide, in that case, to provide tents, blankets, other comfort supplies, and so on. At that time, people were UPS and airlines were much more willing to be able to send materials. So we actually sent 100 tents from Victoria, from our warehouse that we had in Victoria at the time, and several pallets of blankets and other comfort supplies. And that arrived in the Bahamas, was picked up by Rotarians. We completely, I know this doesn't always sound good, but we completely circumvented the government, which was struggling to figure out what to do. And we had Rotarians on the ground taking the materials and setting up the tents in collaboration with their communities that got hit hard. So that was a really interesting first example for me. Our second example, so that was where we were actually sending materials that we had here. Our second example was the fires in Australia. Massive requirement, and Australia, Rotary in Australia said anybody that can help us would greatly appreciate. So we actually worked with Rotary Australia World Community Service, which is an Australian Rotary kind of a higher level organization. And we donated $60,000 that we raised here in Canada to that organization. And what they did was they matched those funds, and then Rotary organizations in Australia were able to get grants and match the funds again. So the money was really leveraged over and over again. And again, it was the Rotary clubs in Australia that worked with their communities to then distribute the funds in projects. So as this was going on, I was finding that this relationship with Rotary, rather than sending money or sending boxes of materials, just seemed to make much more sense because those people had their feet on the ground. The next one that happened was the flooding in Fort McMurray.
Yes.
I mean, it was all over the news. It looked pretty serious. So I contacted the Rotary clubs in Fort McMurray, And the Rotary Club of Fort McMurray Oil Sands, a very young club. Now these folks are in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
They immediately went out into their community to find out what the actual needs were. And so they came back and said, what we actually need is we need to rebuild the electrical systems for a whole bunch of the homes that got flooded. The electrical panels got fried. And you don't want to be in Fort McMurray without electricity.
No, you don't. Trust me, you don't.
So they gave us an estimate. They planned with local electricians and other volunteers that they were able to get. And we raised $14,000 for them, which they leveraged in turn with local support. And they spent the next couple of weekends doing that sort of work. Plus, they also used money for the local food bank, which got flooded out, and a gymnastics center. So having the people on the ground became kind of the key piece for us. We really recognized that we had so much more impact because there's 1.2 million Rotarians around the world. And anywhere, any town, or any city around the world, you can always find a Rotary Club close by. So that we really started to shift last year more to, let's find out what's needed. Let's talk to the Rotarians in the affected areas. So a disaster can be a hurricane, it can be a flood, it can be a fire, it can be a volcano. We've dealt with that in Guatemala and in the Philippines. So it doesn't really matter what the disaster is. And the other thing is, we're not the first people in. We're not the Red Cross. The Red Cross are amongst the first people in.
Yeah.
They go in, they set up their camps and do immediate work. We focus more on what sort of projects can we do within your community, and how can we fund those, and how can we support them?
Yeah,
But there's also the
almost like
long-term
there's some
impact.
gaps that are being filled too, right, Jerry? It sounds like
Sorry?
it sounds to me like you're filling gaps, right?
Yes.
So where other things are happening, these
Yeah.
are some of the gaps that the Rotary Club is able to come in and triage with the help of the local communities of Rotarians.
Yeah.
And having said that, we've spoken a little bit about dollars and cents, in the sense that you sent so many dollars here to 17 grand Australia and 60 grand to down south. Where does that money come from? How do you guys fundraise this stuff? Like how does that impact your ability to do what you need to do?
Well,
you want me to get this one, Ken?
a little bit, yeah. Since incorporating, we have received donations from probably in excess of 4,000 different separate donators, both individuals in the communities as well as Rotarians. And so that's well over $2 million. So we depend on those donations the same way all not-for-profits do. Okay, you don't have to be a Rotarian to become involved. You can donate. Any individual can donate, and I'm going to have Jerry probably talk about our website and on our Facebook page where that can happen. But yeah, we depend on donations to do this, and we leverage that money that we're able to send. And this is a very important factor, that yes, we sent $60,000 to Australia, but those Rotarians used that $60,000 and leveraged that money in Australia with private companies and other individuals to probably, I can't say double or triple or whatever, but obviously it went a lot further than just the funds that we send out.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in all of our other projects. That money is leveraged in the local communities with local companies to go as far as possible.
Yeah, I understand. I really do. And I feel that most, Rotarians, I think, a little bit extra special, truthfully. And I mean that with love. I really do. I know the incredible work that Rotarians do across this country or throughout the world. And so leveraging will certainly be a big part of the expansion. But I also know that with COVID-19, those fundraising abilities just don't look the same as they once did. Have you had some challenges in raising dollars for Disaster Aid Canada? And is there anything our community can do to help support you?
Jerry, I'll throw that one to you.
There you go.
Our donations have dropped radically because most of our work is international. Yeah. And I fully understand that people have become much more concerned about what's happening in their own backyard, in their own families. People are worried about their money and their own money. And, people were actually saving much more than they have in the past. So I fully understand that people have been a little bit more reluctant to donate to international. We've done fairly well, but I would say we're probably down 60% from what we were. So we've turned around again. I mean, it seems like last year was a massive pivot year for us when we kept having to go, oh, okay. One of the things when I was taking my master's degree in leadership at Royal Roads that we learned was a concept called learn to paddle in white water. And that's what we had to do last year. We had to just keep on figuring out what the next set of rapids was going to bring. But
it's funny
one of the beauties of what we can do is that we can leverage $2,500 in donations to $15,000 worth of money on the ground, because Rotary clubs love to do projects. And so when we, for instance, a water project that we just did in Honduras. Now, Honduras got hit really, really hard and is still suffering from the effects of the 2 hurricanes and 2 more tropical storms that hit there. There were people that were flooded out 4 times in a matter of months, lost everything. So we had, I've been talking to Rotary clubs down there, and I was speaking to a fellow called Fernando from Comoyawa in Honduras. And he said there's a village close to where we are that lost their entire water system, and they have to walk 7 kilometers to bring buckets of water back to the community. And it's not clean water, I mean, all the sort of things that go along with that. And they've lost their crops and the whole works. So we said to him, yeah, we're going to help with this, because this is definitely that part of rebuilding communities together. Yeah. We had $2,500 available. And within 2 weeks, we had raised $1,400 Canadian. They stepped up with $1,000 of their own, but the Rotary Club of Comox put in $2,500. The Rotary Club of Victoria Harborside put in $2,700. The Rotary Club of Woodstock Oxford from Ontario put in $1,000. So, and Disaster Aid Australia put in $2,700. So, in no time, we were able to leverage that $2,500. Basically, it's leveraging Rotarians.
Yeah, for sure.
And we were able to put the funding together for that project. And I've got wonderful pictures of that project done, and we're all invited to go down and visit and meet the folks. So that's really where we've gone.
And that brings up such, I think, a valuable and wonderful and insightful piece, is that, we don't see necessarily the good works. We hear about them, but we don't always have the opportunity to see them. But what I know for sure is the gratitude from the people that live in these villages that have been, horribly stricken by these unconscionable disasters, unconscionable weather patterns. We can't even imagine. I mean, I don't know how much you guys have traveled, but I've been in Mexico when the hurricane has come by, not even in, but just sort of come by. And we're not talking about what we know in Canada as for being when these weather patterns come. We don't see these weather patterns here. We have our own set. There's been quite a number of insane weather patterns in this last few years, but it's a different situation in the South. It just is. But the gratitude part of this is really important. How do, this is the perfect time. It's a great segue for us to sort of break open the meat and potatoes of this even further. But before we do that, I know that our listeners are going to want to get your information on Disaster Aid Canada. They're going to want to know the website and all of that. So I invite you listeners, ladies and gentlemen, to please go grab a piece of paper and a pen. You know you're going to want to write this information down, and you may even wish to donate to such an important cause. So please make sure you do that. In a little bit, we're going to continue to, we'll give you the information that you need. In the meantime, we'll continue our conversation. If you have just tuned in, you're listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes. I am your host. In the Zoom booth with me today is Ken Grieg and Jerry Belchin from Disaster Aid Canada. So, whichever one of you wants to feel this is fine, but I was first introduced to Disaster Aid Canada at a Rotary function when we were allowed to meet and be together, which seems like forever ago, in Ladysmith. And you had an incredible booth at a fundraising event that talked about some of the projects that you had been working on over the years. It's great to see everything there because it is very visual, and you can see the pictures of some of the faces of some of the people that you have served. How do you pick your projects? How do you decide which community is going to receive or be supported by Disaster Aid Canada?
I guess I'll better take that one because in the past, I've been doing most of that. As you can imagine, there's no shortage of projects.
Yeah.
So what we have been doing is we've been talking to the Rotary clubs in the areas and asked them what do they see as a priority. Not everybody gets back to us. Then when the project comes up, we'll take a look at it and see if it's something that fits within our objectives. Mm-hmm. And we also take a look at, is it something that we can connect with locally, or is there somebody else from a different disaster aid that should tackle this and we just support them? So last year we had we were asked by Rotary clubs in Chemainus, Ladysmith, and our own club, and Nanaimo, about a famine situation in Guatemala that came right after COVID started, because the people weren't allowed out of their houses. They were totally locked down and didn't have the support that we had. At the same time, there was that massive explosion in Beirut, right? Yes. So we looked at both of those projects and we started to figure out how we were going to support both. But Beirut was just too far away and too complicated for us to get materials for there. So what we did was we partnered there with Disaster Aid UK and Ireland, and Disaster Aid for Czech Republic, and with Rotary clubs in that area. And we just fundraised for that. And then we sent the money to them and let them manage it. So I think we sent $4,000. And that went through a Rotary club in Toronto and through the other disaster aids. With Guatemala, we recognized that because we had people on the ground in that area, the Rotary clubs that we were talking to have been working in that area for 25 years. So we knew that we had the people on the ground that we could work with. So we raised $16,000. That went through the Rotary clubs. It went nothing came off of that. And through the Rotary clubs, and went to, in that particular case, it went to the Women's Directivas and an organization called Mayan Families. And there, that money was distributed by the women in the communities that knew the people that were having the worst problems. And so when we have that type of a situation on the ground, it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, we've got the support.
It's so easy to support a project like that. And that same thing has happened.
And that's exactly why we've become very heavily involved in the collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the collaborative model seems to, I would imagine, Ken, maybe you can break that open a little bit more, but I would imagine that the collaborative model does make more sense, because I would imagine that the cost to ship alone, tents and supplies,
yes,
would be very difficult.
So which is why we've evolved our basically our system to be hands-on in the area and be involved with the collaboratives so that we have the people on the ground, as Jerry says, to be able to handle it. We have a system where there's a proper application process where we can lay out what the project is, what the support needs are, how it's going to work, and then monitor and get feedback on the project, to make sure that we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish with the project. It's not just a matter of somebody saying, hey, we need some help, and okay, here, we'll throw you some dollars. There's a set process that we have developed to make sure that it's being done properly.
So speaking of that, when you talk about the set process and the parameters that go with that, what do you do when you're finding, like, I mean, let's be honest, COVID this year, when we first started, not this year, but in early March of 2020, their shortage of personal protective equipment was, insane in Canada, let alone in other parts of the world. So using that as sort of the foot for ground, how do you deal with a situation, or previously, how have you, when the local people are not able to provide? And then on top of it, there's a shortage worldwide. I mean, obviously this is a brand new pandemic. We had no idea we were going to be in what we did, but how does Disaster Aid Canada field that kind of a challenge?
We were able to, again, working with the Rotary clubs in the areas, and also with Disaster Aid USA. Disaster Aid USA, they're pretty entrepreneurial, and they have connections into China and connections into a variety of places for the materials they buy. So Disaster Aid USA actually had quite a large stock of PPE equipment, and they were able to supply a lot of that. The Rotary clubs that we dealt with in Guatemala and Honduras, again, these people are business people, yeah, successful in the communities. They generally have access one way or the other, because they're going to have them for themselves for sure. And so they were able to find and distribute, and we would provide. So when we sent at Christmas time, we sent money for a little bit Christmas presents and some more PPEs for a variety for 4 different villages in the areas. And they were the ones that actually went out, set up COVID safe Christmas parties, and provided boxes of candy for the kids that they don't have anything. No, and boxes of candy, some nutrition supplements, and some PPE equipment. And
yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that, again, we're talking, as Ken pointed out earlier, it's that collaboration, right? So yes, we jump right into the closest area where there's some support, and their innovativeness can actually help with the cause and be part of the solution. When I think about all of these things, and I think about the name Disaster Aid Canada, I'm curious about, you talked a little bit about what was going on in Fort McMurray. Back east, I think it was last year, in the winter, in the heart of, maybe just recently, not as far as last year, but in the recent last year, when the pipes were frozen in Quebec or Ontario. Where were they frozen? The whole city shut down for like 20 days or something. They had no electricity, no power, solid froze. Now, are there ways for us and the West Coast to help the East Coast of Canada? Do you see disasters happening in Canada that as Canadians we may not know a lot about?
I think
by all means, we have a network of Rotary clubs.
That's the answer.
Yeah,
that's the answer. We work through the Rotary clubs in those other areas. And if they need something, they let us know. But in Canada, we're a very wealthy country.
We are.
We have government support from one end to the other. Though First Nations are still a group that we can probably do more to support. But when there's a disaster in Ontario, like an ice storm or something like that, the government in the local government and all that, they're prepared for those things. You know, they really have what they need. In some cases, like when there was the big fires in northern Alberta a couple of years ago in Fort McMurray, and the fires in the interior of BC, so that was 2016, 2017, we did a lot for those, because those displaced people, that was happening now. And so in those cases, this is before I was on board, but we were part of the fundraising for it. We sent literally container loads of blankets, comfort supplies, hygiene supplies, all that sort of thing. So we were really, you know, finding out what was needed and getting that material there. And that was all done with local donations. So, you know, there's certain situations where we can slip in easily, but there's other situations where we know that our government is already on the ball in those particular areas. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in doing more emergency preparedness. We have actually, we donated 4 emergency preparedness kits, 5 emergency preparedness kits to the town of Ladysmith. Interact students purchased one as well. We worked with the town of Souk, the city of Souk, and they purchased 13 emergency preparedness kits. So we do have those materials here in Canada that we haven't been shipping to Guatemala, but we still have those available up here as well.
I think that you make a very, very good point. In Canada, we are probably the richest. I mean, I think we're one of the richest countries in the world. And I mean, I'm sure if I, as a homeless person, might not feel that way, right, in our communities. But for most of us, we know that really this poverty we have here is nothing like the poverty in some of these other countries of the world. But I also can sort of imagine the voice of many Canadians right now who are just simply nervous about disasters all the way around. And so how can we, and some of the stuff that's happened in our own communities as of late has been rather alarming. How do we, you know, how do we bridge that gap, that balance between having that comfortable conversation about here we are in Canada, relatively safe, and then you go to other parts of the world where there's corruption of government to such a degree that most of the women and children are walking the 7 miles for the water and not having the ability to bring the water back to the villages in any kind of quantities where they can actually find themselves at peace for a period of time. So how do we sort of re-educate our community to recognize this really deep, important part of working interculturally and into the communities that are not as wealthy as we are? I mean, why send our money abroad? Because we can.
Because we have it.
Yeah.
We have the money. We're here in Canada. We're in the top 10% of wealth in the world. The people that we're dealing with in Guatemala right now, the indigenous families that we're dealing with that are living in the highlands of Guatemala, they have nothing. They have been locked into their homes. They've been chased off their land, and they don't have the ability even to earn a living. They have 2 crops, corn and onions. The onions are for the market. The corn is for them. In a lot of cases, a dinner or a meal right now in Guatemala is 1 meal a day.
Yeah. And
it's a corn tortilla. And if you're lucky, you've got salt or some sort of stuff, something to give it a bit of flavor. That's our most recent project. Again, with Rotary Club, Chemainus, City by the Sea, Nanaimo, and Ladysmith, of course. We're doing a nutrition program. And we, a week and a half ago, we bought a ton of nutritional supplements in Guatemala, again, dealing with a Rotary Club there that went straight to the factory that makes the nutritional supplements. And we bought 2,000 pounds of that to be distributed in the highlands where the people, 60% of the children in those areas, 60% are stunted. 60% of them are suffering from severe malnutrition, cleft palates, weak bones. And if those children today are suffering from severe malnutrition, in the future, they won't have the capacity to be able to work. It is this problem that creates not we're going in the wrong direction entirely. The eldest child in those families is sent away in the hope that they will make it to the United States and get some sort of a job at whatever they can get. And once they've paid off the coyotes that do the smuggling across the border, then they start sending money so that the smaller children can eat. So I think, I don't want to make people feel bad, but we have the ability to make so much difference. That dollar that we have here, that's a day's wage for some of these people. Yeah. When we leverage $10, it just can do so much more good. For $5, we can provide nutritional supplements for a mother and child for a month.
And as you talk about the nutritional supplements, we know that particularly in children, if that absorption of those nutrients do not come early, as you said, what does the future look like for them?
Yeah.
Right? They may not have the ability, their bodies become brittle and broken, and it's not possible to get out of that legacy.
That's right.
And Kathy, that brings up another part of the collaboration that people may not fully understand as well.
Yeah.
We're not just trying to alleviate the immediate need, but we're also trying to partner with other nonprofit organizations and educational institutions in those areas to try and build best practices and educate and increase that knowledge base so that these people can become self-sufficient. Okay. Yeah. Because that's very, very important to them too.
Oh, heavens, yeah.
They do not want to be a charity.
No.
Okay. So the whole purpose is to get them doing the work, them being educated, local businesses, local people, and making sure that they're able to build their own community.
Yeah. It sounds to me much like a blanket, right? When we talk about the blanket and being there to support as an essential comfort, that blanket actually is what holds people and brings people together, right? And I've for many, many years say that most of the people in my life are the fabric of my life. It's the thread of each of those threads that come together that make me who I am. And in communities, it's the community threads that all come together. It's the Rotary Clubs and it's the local people that are able to help blanket that community and those individuals so that they can find some safety. Ken, I am curious why and how you got involved with the program. I know Jerry's been around as the executive director of Disaster Aid Canada for some time. What brought you to the conversation and brought you to the table?
Obviously, as being part of the Ladysmith Rotary Club, I've always been interested in doing projects. Now, up until now, I've been basically involved in doing community projects here locally. But we had an opening on the executive board for Disaster Aid Canada with the evolution of the organization, and I was asked to consider a part on the board, and here I am.
And here you are. There you go. Have you had the opportunity yet to do some of what Jerry's been talking about? Have you had the ability to get your hands dirty in this project?
No, unfortunately, I've only been a member of the board now for a couple of months. We haven't had a lot. Jerry has done an absolutely phenomenal job at coordinating all of these projects, and I can't speak enough highly of the work that Jerry's done. So.
We'll make sure that you have some opportunities that tend to.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's enough. Unfortunately, there's disasters all over the place. So there's not. I mean, the reality is sadly the time will come where your supports will be for sure. Jerry, I understand that you guys are doing some rowing, some leaping, and the website is beautiful. I understand it. So tell us, why don't you share? We asked our listeners a little bit ago to go grab a piece of paper and a pen.
Okay, so it's actually fairly easy. It's disasteraid.ca. Type that in, and it'll take you right to the website.
Yep.
And on that, if you want to donate, go ahead and hit that button right up at the top.
Absolutely.
And,
Call to action. Donate,
yes,
donate,
there's a
donate.
call to action right there.
Yeah.
And right now we have several different projects on there that you can donate to. If you're interested in supporting the oxygen concentrators in India, there is a Rotary district over there that is organizing it, and we're partnering with the Rotary district 78, 80, I think it is, in Ontario to make sure that the money goes where it's needed. Right again, we have this ability to channel things all the way through. The other project that is really dear to my heart and to many other people is this nutritional supplement. Rotary, one of Rotary's key areas is maternal health and wellness.
Yeah.
And we recognize that if we don't help with this at this time, it just creates such a rolling effect through the future. And so we've been doing this, but you can donate specifically to that, and 100% of your donation, except for if you use a credit card, the credit card comes off, but 100% of your donation goes towards that project, which is our goal to do more of in the future. So we reduce our overhead, cover the overheads with specific grants, and have the money available for the projects. That is really key to the direction that we're going in. So disasteraid.ca is the website. CA is the website, and if you search for Disaster Aid Canada, our Facebook page is generally being updated on a fairly consistent time, and the whole history of the last couple of years is available on the disasteraid.ca page, plus tons of photographs and whole stories. And the news, we also have a newsletter. If people are interested, they can opt into the newsletter on the website. We try and make those interesting. And let's see what else. Oh, and our online donations go through Canada Helps, which is a nonprofit organization that supports nonprofit organizations by having an amazing financial portal. So everybody gets a tax receipt. If you do the donation through Canada Helps, they will get an instant tax receipt. It all goes into our records. We keep complete records of our donors, so that if next year you can't find that receipt, all you have to do is make a phone call and you'll get a copy of that receipt within an hour or so.
I'm not a big fan. I mean, I know it's great for our taxes, but like we talked about a bit ago, we're Canadians, and as Canadians, in all fairness, we have abundance. So when I think about disaster, the tax receipt to me is secondary for me personally, but it's not the same for everyone. I'm really delighted at the fact that you have the option to be able to go very specific, but you did tweak my interest regarding India. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit more about that particular program?
As that started to really turn into the crisis that it is now,
yeah.
Once their hospitals were overwhelmed, it's a tipping point, and we've been so lucky that did not happen in BC,
yeah.
Because you could have a certain amount of COVID happening, but once you overwhelm the hospitals, that's when the deaths really escalate. And in India, they ran out of oxygen. Like, they did not have enough oxygen, and so people started dying. They passed the tipping point, and the deaths, even the crematoriums could not keep up to the amount of deaths that were happening there. So the solution is not to buy bottled oxygen. The solution is what's called an oxygen concentrator, and they're only about $600, and they can be reused. And it's not 100% oxygen, but it's about 95 to 98% pure oxygen. And so they can set that up. They don't have to change bottles and all that, and it's very effective. Now, there's been a lot of concern because the government of India really cracked down on who could donate to India. There was some issues there, and luckily Rotary is one of the organizations that you can donate through. So we are simply raising money to push through the Rotary channel, right? So you can donate money to disasteraid.ca. You'll see right on there for India. That will go to the project itself. I sent $2,000 yesterday to the district in Ontario, the same one that we worked with in the past with the Beirut explosion. So it's that Rotary linkage. It's that Rotary linkage all the way through.
I love Rotary. I'm not a Rotarian. I've been asked
Well,
to
you
be a
should be.
Rotary. I know I get asked all the time. I have been asked by many people, including Ken, many times.
Yes.
Yes. And unfortunately, being that I have so much on my plate right now, which
I
most
understand.
people I don't know, but I am a friend of Rotary. I've sold more 50-50 tickets for Rotary. You can imagine. Like I don't even need to be a Rotarian for that part of it. I'm raising money for you all the time or whatever.
Okay, that's great.
I figured that was close.
That's what you see. We gladly accept your donation, Kathy, in any time.
Donation of time or
Like I said,
money is always
I don't know how well you know Bill Robinson from the local Rotary here, but let me tell you, he's had me sell a lot of tickets over a lot of years. Anyway, long story short about that. Listen, we're nearing the end of our program. We're not there yet, but we're nearing the end of the program. And this is the time of the program when, for me, I like to really break open those life lessons and those learning moments. And so I'm going to ask you each to take your turn. It's up to you, whichever order you want to do it. But just I'd like you to lean in. I mean, if we could teach our community something about what we are talking about today and experiencing, what your experience has been in the field of doing this, I know that our audience would be very, very grateful. Who'd like to go first?
Good, Ken.
Okay, thanks. I think that one of the reasons that I came onto the board with Disaster Aid Canada is because I see the effect that these projects are having on individuals. You know, you take into consideration what's going on right now here in Canada with the Indigenous community, and you know that the things that have happened in the past all over the world. It's not just Canada that has suffered from those types of things. And when you get a project and you see the effect it has on individuals, on kids, on the communities, and you realize the gratitude that's being shown, it just puts a whole different spin on things. We're all human beings. I don't care whether you're black, white, or what color your skin is, or what nationality you are. We're all human beings, and sometimes a human being needs a hand up, not necessarily a handout, but a hand up. And I think that these projects are an absolute fantastic way of doing that.
And I think about the dollars that we've talked about already, $2,000 to India and all of that, and the leveraging availability, right? I mean, $2,000 is nothing in the small picture, but in the big picture, in these communities, that's massive. Like I think that
it's all relative to where that $2,000 is.
So important to recognize that. Yeah, absolutely.
When that truck comes into, when that truck shows up at Panajachel at the Mayan families and they start unloading the bags of nutritional supplements, then you can really see the impact. For me, I think somebody said one time, everything is about you and your relationships. And what I see is that when we work together, when we collaborate, when we work as partners, we can move mountains. We can do amazing things. And it's the thing that keeps me in Rotary, is that we have this worldwide network, and I can phone call people anywhere in the world or send them an email, but I can pick up the phone and call them. And they know I'm a Rotarian. I know they're a Rotarian. We're on the same kind of plan. You know, it's service above self. And when we work together, the difference that we can make it's miraculous. It really is. Simple as that.
Amen to that. It's very true. Joan Ryan is a dear friend of mine and was a very, is still, I believe, a strong Rotarian. And one of the things that she taught me was the importance of that networking. And she really shared with me the Rotarian directory, which was like, she pulled out this little blue book and it was the Rotarian directory. And I thought to myself, wow, like there's so much information in just that directory of the people that have huge hearts and do huge, huge things in our community. Thank you so much for sharing Disaster Aid Canada with us on today's program. I think it's about time you shout out your information one more time before we close out the day.
Disasteraid.ca is the website. Yep. Disaster Aid Canada is the name. The mailing address is P.O. Box 2141, Ladysmith, BC, V9G 1B6. What other contact information can we provide?
Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Facebook.
If you're on Instagram.
And we're also on Instagram.
Yeah.
So just look up Disaster Aid Canada.
And really donate is really important. If you could just a couple bucks, $5, $2, whatever it is you got. Oh. I actually, there's one thing that again, I was talking about Joan a little bit ago. One thing that people may not realize is if you ever see somebody with their pinky painted in purple, it's a Rotarian thing, right?
Yeah.
And it has to do with who wants to share. Which one of you want to tell what it is? Or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, it's the purple nail polish. Rotarians were responsible for helping to eradicate polio.
Yeah. Yep. There's only been 2 incidents of polio this year in the world. And it's been, I think, 121 days since the last report. And the purple pinky is when kids are inoculated in all these different countries, they get their pinky painted in purple. Yeah. And it's kind of the sign, I've got, where's my little, here's my little, my band saying I've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Where's somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's okay. People can't hear it on the radio, but they can watch us when they watch us on YouTube for sure.
That's right. But it's that purple pinky is a point of pride in all these little countries, and it's a point of pride for Rotarians because in 1985 we joined with the World Health Organization to eradicate polio, and we are so close now.
When you think about 2 people in the entire world, you think you're almost there. You're winning. Yeah. You're absolutely.
We have to be clear for 3 years before they say that it's been eradicated, and it will be only the second major disease that has been eradicated.
That's huge. Absolutely huge. Well, that's it for us today on Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. My guests have been Jerry Belton and Ken Grieg from Disaster Aid Canada, both of them fabulous guests. It was a privilege to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to know more about what it is that they do, don't forget disasteraidcanada.ca, and please make sure that you press that donate button. Every dollar helps, and we're helping the world. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We will see you next time on Act 3. Thanks for joining us and have an amazing day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bye. Thanks, Kathy.
Guys. Thanks. It was a privilege as always. Cheers.